How do I make the decision, especially when every option feels wrong? Hi, I'm Iman. I used to be a family lawyer for 19 years in Singapore and in England, and now I am a divorce coach and mediator. This is Divorce Actually, and it's about what you might actually need in your divorce or separation that isn't more legal advice or more emotional processing. Today, we are talking about how you are going to actually make those decisions that you might be stuck in. Now, it's not about why you're stuck. I talked about why you're stuck a little bit in episode 1. And now, episode 4 is the gold mine of the method for getting unstuck. How do we move from endless analysis to actual decisions that you will not regret later on? Let's go. What's the most common thing that people say when they are stuck in a decision? It could be, I just need more information. It could be, I'm not ready to decide yet. Or you could be saying, every option feels wrong. Or I can't see the path forward. And of course, there is the, well, what if I make the wrong choice? What if I regret it later? This is waiting for certainty, and the certainty is not coming. It's never going to come, actually. The truth is, and you won't like it, divorce decisions are often made with incomplete information. Actually, probably almost all the time, divorce decisions are made with incomplete information. So there is no option that feels completely 100% right, because actually all options involve some kind of loss. There's no winners in divorce. So now that we know this, let's come to terms with it. The question is not which option has no downsides at all, but which option's downsides can I live with? Sometimes we hope that the right answer will become obvious. The thing is, how long are we going to wait for this to happen? What if it doesn't happen? You're going to have to decide anyway. So how do you make this decision when you don't have perfect information? Have we accepted that perfect information is not going to come in the divorce? Why is it not coming? Well, we don't know how anyone's going to respond. That's the truth. We don't control their behavior. And no one can say with 100% certainty. No lawyer can say this, and I really hope that no lawyers are saying this, that they can guarantee what a judge will decide. And nobody can really say how the kids are going to adjust. So what I'm saying here is that you can't predict the future. You can only make the decisions that you have based on the current data. And so the framework about deciding is about defining what you need versus what would be nice, and questions to ask about the information that you're getting. What information is actually relevant, decision relevant, versus anxiety reduction? Because yes, we all have anxiety around very big, very important decisions. And we think if we just have this bit more of information, I will feel less anxious about it. But let's try to strip it back. What's the minimum information that I need to know in order to make this choice? And to move us along forward even more, what will I learn if I try out one of these options? Let's call it option A. What will I learn by trying out option A that I can't learn by continuing to analyze? Let me give a concrete example. Should I tell my ex I'm leaving or just move out? Here is some decision-relevant information. Are there safety concerns? And this is really, really important, because if this is an unsafe situation, one where there is violence, then telling someone you're leaving could be a terrible idea. This might be a situation where you have to move out without telling them. So yes, first stop, information you need. Do I have safety concerns? Do I need legal advice first? This might be important. In fact, this is pretty important. You need to know some legal basics about your situation in order to make a decision. And then, if there are children involved here, what you will also need to have information on is what are the arrangements around where the children are going to be living and how will the other parent see them. That is a working knowledge, okay? Decision relevant information. What is not relevant? What do we not need to know? Exactly how they're going to react. Well, I mean, we don't need to know that definitively, how they're going to react. We don't need to know whether they understand why. I mean, do you? Do you really need to know whether they're going to understand why you're doing this? Is that going to make your decision one way or the other? And do we really need to know what their family is going to think? What our family is going to think about it? Your situations are all different. Whoever is listening to this out there, I know everyone's situation is different. And so your information that is decision relevant will be different. So you need to have enough information that lets you make an informed choice. You do not need all the possible information there is that exists outside in the world. Now, what if you literally can't decide between two options because both of those options seem completely terrible? Yes, these are the impossible decisions, and I do have a framework for that too. Let's start with what will I regret? Now, this is the one where I ask you to look a little bit into your future, envision your future. Imagine that it's 2 or even 5 years from now, and you've got these two options, option A and option B. If you choose option A, what does life look like in this 2 to 5 years from now? What do you regret? Now imagine instead you chose option B. What does life look like? And what regrets do you have? I'll give you a moment to think about that. Like really see if you can envisage it, or if not, you can pause the playback for now and just think about it. Maybe write a note about it if you want to. Think about what life will look like and what regrets would you have if you chose option A. I don't know what your option A is. You have an option A. And once you've done that, now think about what if you chose option B. Again, in 5 years or 2 to 5 years, what does life look like when you've chosen option B? What do you regret, if any? And if you think about the two regrets, option A regret and option B regret, which regret can you live with better? Now, notice how I'm talking about regrets. There is no regret option. It just doesn't exist. What you're picking is the manageable regret. When you look at it from that perspective, which of your two impossible options are you going to pick? Second way of looking at the decisions. What are your values? And how do you prioritize your values? Again, grab your pen and paper. This is time to do some work, some written work. List out your actual values. We all have different values. Some people will say, I value stability. Some people will say, I value autonomy. Some will say peace. Some will say financial security. Some, of course, will put their kids' well-being up there, front and center. And that's what you're going to do. Write out your actual values. They don't have to be in order of priority as you write them out. Once you have written them out, now you get to rank them. What matters more when there is a conflict? So if you have a conflict between financial security and children's well-being, which of those two are more important to you? Let's go back to your option A and option B, your impossible decisions. Map out each option with your ranked and prioritized values. Which option aligns with your top 3 values? Now, maybe it does violate some of the values which have lower priorities. That's a possibility. The better decision for you will be the one that aligns with your top values. Also, we are not done yet. Now we are going to look at disaster scenarios because, wow, the human brain loves always looking at the worst possible outcome. So let's go there. Option A. What is the worst case scenario outcome? And can you survive it? And now let's look at option B. Again, what is the worst case outcome of option B? Can you survive that? If you can actually survive both worst cases, you are choosing between acceptable risks. So actually, there is no catastrophic thinking here. This should help to unfreeze your thinking and help you make a decision. I think you're catching along now with where I'm going with this. And when you are, you will probably be asking, well, actually, how do I know what are my actual priorities? Because I have priorities that I think I should have, but are they my actual priorities? And this is huge. I love for you that you are thinking about this. A lot of people are optimizing their lives for what sounds good instead of what they actually value. And yes, I am looking at you. I'm even looking at me. We all do this. There are so many things around us that we think we should have, that we should need or should want, but actually it's not what you actually want or need. We're just being influenced by the things around us. You can test this. Test it by looking at your behaviors, not what you have written down maybe as your stated values. If you say that kids' well-being is your top priority, and you keep fighting about the custody schedule to prove you are right, then being right is your actual priority. If you say, I want peace, but you keep engaging in conflict to get a fair outcome, fairness might not be your priority. Neither is wrong, by the way. I'm not here to say that any of these are wrong. You are optimizing this for yourself, and you have to be honest about it. So how do you bring to the surface your true priorities, this honesty? What are you willing to compromise on? Because compromise often tells us what are real priorities to us. What do you keep coming back to in every conversation that you have? And I'm going to let you have this chance to replay these conversations in your mind, let you do a little bit of thinking and overthinking maybe even here. Because when you keep coming back to the same topics in conversation, that is telling you what is important to you, what actually matters to you. And so now we engage our imaginations and visualizations again. When you imagine you have decided to go with option A, what makes you the most angry or sad about it? I ask you this because it tells you what you are losing that matters to you. And do the same for option B. When you decide to choose option B, what makes you feel angry or sad about it? And please just be ruthlessly honest here. The truth is that we all have an idealized version of ourselves. And when we actually start taking this deep dive and being honest about our priorities and our values, it might not match up or reflect this idealized version of who we think we should be. And that's okay. What we're here for are decisions that we don't regret. And so it's got to align with our truest self. What about decisions that I keep changing my mind about every few days? And I'm going to call this oscillation. And it's really, really, really common. What it tells me about you is that you are using feelings as your decision-making input. Today, you feel strong, so you're leaving. And tomorrow, you feel scared, so you're staying. Next week, you feel angry. You're definitely leaving. The thing is, our feelings are not consistent. They change. And they shift based on the last interaction you had, sometimes how you slept. I mean, let's talk about hangry. Hangry is when you're hungry and then it gets you angry. Sometimes our feelings change based on interactions at work, interactions with friends. So sometimes feelings are not the way. The feelings will not be the sole determiner of your decisions. So how can you help yourself here? Try this. Give yourself a decision deadline. Pick a date that you say you are going to make a decision by. And between now and that date, gather all the information, but don't decide. Hear me out. When you get to that date, decide based on the information that you have, regardless of how you feel that day. And then when you've got that decision on that date, commit 90 days minimally before you reconsider. So what happens when you commit to that 90 days and you don't change your mind? Well, we remove the feelings that change from day to day. And you are actually not deciding every day whether you should stay or go. You decided on the date. And that decision is going to hold for 3 months. So what? So this means you are giving yourself a break from constant decision making. Wild. I know. At this point, you might be thinking, oof, so many frameworks. How am I going to apply them? What does it look like in real life? I mean, this is all theoretical so far. Okay, I give you a real scenario. There is a person who can't decide whether to sell the matrimonial home or to buy out their spouse's share. On the surface, to them, both options don't feel great. Let's put those frameworks into practice. The regret test. 2 options here, right? We're going to sell the matrimonial home. 5 years from now, what would regrets look like? Regrets could be that the kids lost their childhood home, this neighborhood that they're familiar with. Maybe they will have to switch schools, and so there's some effect on the school stability. If you kept the home, bought out the spouse's share, 5 years from now, maybe that regret is the financial strain and struggle that you've put yourself under. And it meant that you couldn't have these other opportunities because you have to watch the finances all the time. Which of these regrets feels more survivable to you? If the financial struggle is worse than losing the family home, then this tells to you that selling is the option. But let's not stop there. We have the other frameworks to apply. Let's think about this person's ranked values. So, number 1 to them as a parent is kid stability. Number 2 is financial security. And there's also autonomy, which means the ability to make decisions. And number 4, nostalgia. That is stated in order of rank. Selling means a short-term disruption, but in longer terms, it means that she has financial security. So that aligns with her value of financial security. If she kept the home, yep, that aligns with the children's stability and well-being, right? But the financial stress is huge. Her first priority, the children's stability, is met, but there's a huge conflict with the second priority of financial stability. And she has to choose now. There is a conflict of values here. She has to choose. And so the conflict is which values matter more. That's why we then need to move on to the next framework. So disaster scenario. If she sold it, what is the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario for selling the family home. Kids will struggle with the move and she regrets it forever because, once you sell it, it's unlikely you're going to buy it back. That's one. Let's look at the other option. Keeping the family home. What is the worst case here? Well, she can't afford the mortgage and then she has to sell it anyway because if not, financial doom is pending. So objectively, if you look at this, the second case, which is keeping it now, would be objectively worse, because selling now is coming from a position of choice. Selling later is coming from a position of financial desperation. So when you put all of these together, what does it look like here? Selling the house is the right decision. And it doesn't feel good at all, but the frameworks show that it aligns with her actual priorities. And yes, she is going to grieve. She will be feeling sad about that decision, but she is no longer second guessing it. But what if I make a decision and then I realize I was wrong? Okay, we have another framework for this. Not all decisions are permanent, but you do need a clear criteria for when you're going to revisit them. So set your revision triggers in advance. It's really important to have these kind of criteria. This is really what helps you make decisions. Now, revision triggers might be a particular circumstance. So I'll reconsider this decision if a specific circumstance happens. But it's not if I feel differently, then I will change my mind. It's got to be if certain facts change. So for example, if you've decided to stay, then, and maybe you've put a timeline on this, you're going to stay for another 18 months because PSLE. When will you revisit this decision to stay? Number one, if violence occurs, I would say that that is a trigger that gets you to revisit the decision. Number two, if the kids are showing significant distress, that could be a reason to revisit. So these are objective triggers. Okay, it's not an emotional state of your own. It prevents you from having this constant reconsideration, this overthinking and flip-flopping between situations. You get to have flexibility for genuine changed circumstances. But when we talk about, ooh, have I made the wrong decision? Actually, this is more about, ooh, how do I feel about the decision? Because when I make this decision, it costs me something. The cost is I don't want to feel this way. And so I'm going to put it out there again. All decisions have costs. There is a cost. It doesn't mean you chose wrongly. The wrong decision is a decision that violates your values hierarchy or that creates an unmanageable disaster scenario. An uncomfortable decision is not the same as a wrong decision. So, where does that leave us? How do we stop second guessing after we've decided? Because I'm going to say you have made the decision now, right? You're going to write down why you made the decision using the frameworks. Literally write down, I chose option A because the regrets were this and my values are this. And the disaster scenario, when I imagined this worst case scenario, it showed this. So as soon as you start second guessing, you can now come back to this document and read it again. Often our future anxious selves will forget whatever reasoning that we have used. So your present self now making the decision, you need to record that. Also helpful is to decide sometimes that we need to stop consuming certain information after we have made a decision. If you have decided that you're staying strategically, then you don't need to read any more content about how to leave. You would just focus on your staying strategically plan. If you decided to leave, then maybe let's not read the how to save your marriage content anymore. I know that feels very, very uncomfortable. And there will be some people out there who don't agree. That's okay. What I want to say is that continuing to consume information that opposes your decision is going to reopen your decision for you. So you have decided. Now you have to execute the decision, not argue with yourself about that decision. In closing, I will say that decision making in divorce is not about finding that perfect option. It's about choosing the manageable regret, the aligned values, the survivable disaster. In the next episode, we are going to dive even further into that values proposition. What are you actually optimizing for when you say you want fairness and you want peace? I'm going to call it the question behind the question. As always, if this was useful, if you have questions, if you need clarification, I am here for you. Get in touch at divorceatelier.com. I'm Iman, and this is Divorce Actually.